Are you a footballer who wants to maximize your performance to succeed at the top level? My new ebook, Strength and Conditioning 101 for Female Footballers, is now available. For free and instant access, simply head on over to jacobandre.com. Link is in the show notes. G'day and welcome to the Women's Footy podcast. I am your host, Jacob Andre, and today I am talking about nutrition for game day. This is a follow-on episode from last week's episode, which was on hydration for game day. So today I'm going to be talking about nutrition. I'm going to preface this episode with the fact that I am not a qualified dietitian or nutritionist. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I have experience and knowledge in nutrition, but I do not have a specific qualification. For specific individualized advice, I highly recommend you go and seek out a qualified dietitian or nutritionist. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this from my point of view with my knowledge, but also from my own experiences. So what I'm going to start with is the same as with the hydration. You need to make sure that you are chronically fueled in terms of your nutrition, the same as you would with your hydration. It's not a matter with the hydration in hydrating the day of or even the day before game day. It's important that you hydrate every day of the week leading up. And it's the same with nutrition. You cannot just eat healthy that day or pay attention to the foods that you're eating and when you're eating on the day of the game or even the day before. You need to be eating every single day leading up. It needs to be part of healthy habits, a healthy lifestyle, so that you are healthy day in, day out, because doing so, mixed with everything else, including sleep and other performance enhancers, you need to be able to put yourself in the best position to be able to train so that you can play your best on game day. So when it comes to nutrition, I am a huge advocate for fasting. I'm not going to get into fasting in this episode. That could be a whole episode on its own. And if you want to know more about fasting, I've written several blog articles on my website at jacobandre.com. Head on over to that website, jacobandre.com. Head to the blog section and just search in there. It'll either be down the side column if you're on a desktop, or down the bottom on that page, on that blog page if you're on mobile, and search for fasting. So there's different types of fasting. The particular type of fasting I'm going to be referring to here is the 16 and 8 method, which means that you fast for 16 hours and you eat within an 8-hour window. There's some research around why the 16 hours is good, 14 hours being minimum. If you are going to fast, then it's really going to impact your performance on game day depending on when you are going to be eating. So when your game is, which is then going to impact on when you are going to eat. But let's leave when you eat for a moment and let's talk about what to eat. Now, if you are a vegetarian, that is great. And I would really even more so suggest you go and speak to a qualified dietitian or nutritionist, because I'm going to be talking about this point from the point of view of eating meat, because I eat meat. I think meat is good for you. And in my experience, I've seen a lot of athletes have huge performance enhancement from eating meat. It's something that I like to do, and I believe that eating meat is very good for us. So when it comes to eating any meal, what I suggest is that you are consuming 3/4 to a half vegetable and 1/4 to a half meat. There are times where I personally would have a meal that consists of 75% meat and even at times 100% meat. So at minimum, though, I would suggest that you are consuming 1/4 of your meal as high quality protein in terms of meat. And when I say meat, I mean red meat, chicken or poultry, and fish, or seafood. So you can play around with this and find what works best for you. And that's a really important thing to consider, is that you need to find what works for you. But typically, if you were to get a plate or a bowl, let's just say a plate, I would suggest, from my experience and certainly for what works for me, to consume 3/4 or fill that plate 3/4 full with vegetables and colorful vegetables, trying to stay away from plain colored vegetables like white and brown vegetables. So for example, potatoes, but eating more colorful vegetables and eating as much color as you can possibly get. So 3/4 vegetables and 1/4 high quality protein. And that could be red meat, poultry, or seafood. Then supported by healthy fats. And what I mean by supported by is that you are consuming healthy fats in the form of oil, so olive oil or avocado oil, or other forms of fat such as avocado. So you might slice it up. I got confused there a little bit with myself because I was saying avocado oil. So when I'm cooking something, I will typically use avocado oil. And when I'm having something cold, I will typically use olive oil. There are times that I might use olive oil to cook, but I don't want to get into it too much. There's some stuff out there about whether olive oil is great to use to cook because it's not stable at those higher temperatures. It's certainly very, very healthy and it's very effective. So when it comes to anything cold, like a salad, I would suggest drizzling olive oil over the top. When it comes to cooking with an oil, my favorite is avocado oil or coconut oil. So either one of those three when it comes to health supported by healthy fats. Olive oil, avocado oil, or coconut oil. Then, and in terms of avocado, having that sliced up on the side, I would suggest maybe half of an avocado would be a good amount to then support the 3/4 vegetables and 1/4 protein. You can play around with that. It can be 50-50, 50% vegetable, 50% protein. And certainly there can be at times, as I said, where it's 75% protein and 25% vegetable. And there's been times where I have consumed 100% protein. Hey, Jacob here with a quick message. If you're enjoying this episode of the Women's Footy Podcast and you want more fitness tips for the female footballer, I encourage you to join our Instagram channel, Footy Fit Fam. Link is in the show notes. Now, back to the show. So when it comes to how you would eat during the day, what I suggest is that every day leading up during the week that you are fasting until, say, lunchtime, say 12, 1 o'clock, 16 hours from the last time you consumed something. And then from there, when you eat for the first time, say at lunchtime, that you have leftovers from the night before. And that is primarily going to be what I just suggested, a plate where it is at least 1/4 high quality protein, some form of meat, and then supported by and then also the vegetables and supported by those healthy fats. In the afternoon, some kind of a snack, whatever that might be for you. It could be some fruit, it could be yogurt even, it could be a muesli bar, could be cheese and crackers even. So whatever it is that you like to consume. And then dinner time, the same thing. At least 1/4 protein, 3/4 vegetable, and play around with that anywhere between 1/4 to 3/4 for each of the vegetable and the protein. Vegetables, by the way, are a carbohydrate. So when you are consuming vegetables, it is carbohydrate. Carbohydrates, by the way, are one of the 3 macronutrients. So you've got carbohydrate, protein, and fat. And then you've also got your micronutrients. And micronutrients are responsible for a whole bunch of biochemical reactions in the body. So they are very important. Micronutrients are your vitamins and minerals. And so vitamins such as vitamin C helps with the immune system. Different minerals such as iron helps with transporting oxygen around the bloodstream. So really important that you get your vitamins and minerals, which are your micronutrients. And the best way to get micronutrients is in vegetables. So yes, vegetables are a carbohydrate. Yes, I don't typically suggest people eat carbohydrate in terms of the typical type carbohydrates, or what I would personally refer to as empty calorie type or empty carbohydrates. So they avoid of kind of any real vitamins and minerals, any micronutrients. They're full of more carbohydrate, which is a macronutrient, and that is your pasta, bread, and rice. So yes, you can consume that, but it's more of a filler food in my opinion, because while it is a carbohydrate and it's going to give you energy, it doesn't have as much micronutrients as what vegetables are going to have. So I believe getting your carbohydrate from your vegetables predominantly is much more healthy. And when I shifted to that eating lifestyle, I found that I was able to lose weight. I was never really overweight, but I lost a couple of kilos. I was able to manage my weight much more easily and keep that weight level at a steady level. So instead of, going back to eating simple carbohydrates like, your breads, pastas, rice, particularly as well as your sugars and stuff like that, eliminating that for sure, then I was able to maintain my weight. And my whole face just changed. You can just see it. You can see it in someone who has given up those typical carbohydrates like a pasta, rice, and bread. So when it comes to go back to when it comes to eating, what I'm saying is I recommend having leftovers from the night before for lunch, have, as I suggested, for afternoon tea, some sort of snack food, and then the dinner that I suggested with the 3/4 to 1/4 of carbohydrate vegetables to protein. And then from there, on game day, what I suggest is 3 to 4 hours before the game, have a meal that's relatively easy to digest in carbohydrate, but most importantly is sort of a balance. So sort of about 50-50 or 75%, once again, 75% vegetable and 1/4 high quality protein. A protein that would be good would be something poultry, so like chicken, maybe some fish. You could have meat, but I would just be careful on how much meat you're having. Maybe I don't want to get into grams. I was going to go into grams. I don't want to get into grams, but just because it's going to be unique to each person. But a small amount of meat, red meat, could be effective. But a quarter of that meal, 3 to 4 hours before a game, being a high quality protein. Personally, I'm a real big fan of chicken. So, and I mean, I don't want to get into, again, I'm going to get into a whole bunch of stuff, which I could go into in a future episode, with chicken having an effect where it then leads you to feel tired. So play around with it and see what works for you. But I like having a meal 3 to 4 hours out, which is a high quality protein. And if that is for you, chicken, that's great. If it's not, and if it's seafood, or if it's red meat, or if it's not any meat and it's a vegetarian protein like beans, then that's great, and go with that. Play around with it and find what works for you, but consume it about 3 to 4 hours before a game. I think closer towards the 4 hour mark, along with the carbohydrate. And that is typically going to be your vegetables. So you're going to get all those micronutrients in there, and supported by healthy fats. And what I would suggest is if you're having those vegetables as a salad, drizzle olive oil over it. If you're frying up some veggies, then fry it up in some avocado oil. But I would also consume some avocado as a whole, chopped up, because avocado is really high in potassium, and potassium helps to hold water in the body, which is going to keep you hydrated. So people often think about bananas, for example, for potassium, but avocados are actually a very, very good source of potassium, and are really effective if you are cramping up in games, to add into your diet. So 3 to 4 hours out, we're looking at 3/4 to a half of vegetables and 1/4 to a half of high quality protein. About 1 to 2 hours out from a game, some simple to digest carbohydrate, probably some form of a fruit, maybe some simple vegetables if you're going to be consuming that. If you want more vegetables, but otherwise going with a fruit. And you could also look at some really kind of simple protein and fat. Potentially even a muesli bar might work well, but I would try and keep it as natural as possible. So I would be sticking with maybe just some fruit to keep it nice and simple and easy. And then from there, we're then continuing to hydrate through a game. I don't want to get into hydration too much because I spoke about that in the last episode, but hydrating through different mechanisms, water being the primary one, but otherwise I like coconut water. Again, we're getting into nutrients here, so you're going to get the electrolytes from the micronutrients from the coconut water. And then the next most important part is the post meal, and that's where we want to increase the protein intake slightly more than what we did before the game, because we want to repair damaged muscle. So we're looking at once again high quality protein, and we might up that to about the 50 to 75%, and then have the carbohydrate in the form of vegetables, and maybe drop that back a little bit. So we're looking at 50-50 so 50% carbohydrate vegetables to 50% high quality protein, up to 75% protein, 25% vegetables, with, once again, supported by some healthy fats. So if we're frying our vegetables, it might be in coconut oil or avocado oil, or if we're having fresh salad, drizzled with some olive oil, and once again, some avocado as a fruit if we can, continuing to keep drinking water throughout to stay hydrated. If you want to know about hydrating after a game, go back and listen to that last episode. So that's nutrition for game day. It's, in summary, eating a plate of food which is 3/4 vegetable to 1/4 protein, and going up to about 50% either way. And after a game or the night of a game, increasing that protein intake to potentially as high as 75% protein, 25% carbohydrate. I'm going to reiterate once again, I'm not a qualified dietitian or nutritionist. So for specific individual advice, please go and see a dietitian or a nutritionist for advice specific to you. But this information should help you with helping to maximize your performance on game day. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Are you a footballer who wants to maximize your performance to succeed at the top level? My new ebook, Strength and Conditioning 101 for Female Footballers, is now available. For free and instant access, simply head on over to jacobandre.com. Link is in the show notes.